Good morning. This is an introduction for the screenplay Supertanker. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Ric Lawes. I've been in the film business since 1986 and I've been writing since 1976. I've written books, articles, screenplays, and I'm represented by Novel Process Literary Agency, Mr. Scott Douglas in the US, and my screenwriting days started in year 2000. I was mentored by Dr. Lou Hunter, who is the Professor Emeritus at UCLA, and from there I've written about 7 screenplays at this point. 2 films have been, or 1 film has been produced and 1 is in process, about to start shooting in February next year, called Black Widow. So let me fill you in a little bit about Supertanker. Supertanker was something which I put together I started thinking about it in 1996 when I was living in Malaysia. There was a lot of stories at the time regarding piracy of vessels that would just disappear into the Indonesian islands from the Malacca Straits, which is on the west coast of Malaysia, just south of Thailand. Ships that were heading from Maptaput up in Thailand's central area towards the Cambodian border, going down, taking crude oil through the Straits and heading up into India. And so it was a very unique sort of arrangement. I was living in Malaysia at the time, in Kuala Lumpur, and I travelled to both sides of the country. I was in Cebu in Malaysia, in the east side, in Sarawak. I went up to Sabah to look at the issues of the people coming from the Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines and moving down, and I could see that there was no possible way you could take shipping through the northern parts of Kota Kinabalu and the state of Sabah on eastern Malaysia, or Sarawak on the island of Sarawak. So Malacca became something of interest to me. I travelled to Singapore, I went up to Malacca, I had a look at it. It was a Portuguese settlement on the west side of Malaysia. And at that point I was fairly interested in trying to take this a bit further. It wasn't until I moved to Thailand in year 2000 that I realised there was a big film industry within Thailand, far more than my home country of Australia. The story evolved because it was becoming more of a topical arrangement way before anything that Somalia did, and it was quoted by Lloyd's of London that it was probably one of the most dangerous straits in the world. And because neither country claimed ownership, neither Malaysia, Singapore or Indonesia, it was open water but close enough to each country that if somebody wished to take a tanker or wished to take any sort of shipping, they could. And back then, large cargo vessels, container vessels, were being just hijacked and taken into the archipelago of the Indonesian islands, where new paint, new names, and the vessel would reappear 6 months later. No one could find it. There wasn't aerial surveillance at the time. There wasn't satellite imaging that was able to pick it up. So it was a very unique sort of storyline. Then we had the beginnings of Somalia, and we saw the Timothy McVeigh bombing of Oklahoma City, and I thought to myself, if you had 2 drums of oil, of diesel oil, and you had some nitroprils, which is basically sulfate of ammonia, and you mix the 2 together, if you can take out the side of a building with just 80, 90 gallons of fuel, then what the hell could you do with a supertanker that holds 400,000 gallons of crude oil? At that point, terrorism was just beginning to rear its ugly head. 9/11 didn't happen till, of course, to bring the whole world into focus of what was going on. So I thought there would be a nice way to put a screenplay together, because I think it's only a matter of time before someone actually does this, where they try and take hold of a supertanker and someone tries to blow the supertanker, and if they put 2 and 2 together, it would be a hell of a bang. So I put together the story. I did a lot of research in relation to the shipping. I looked at everything from radio frequencies, for emergencies. I had to search beacons for tracking the vehicle. I had to find out what ports in Asia were able to take shipping as large as a supertanker, because you can't just tie those up alongside a mudflat. You've got to have mile-long jetties that go out that can actually offload these ships or fill these ships, depending what you're doing. Crude oil by itself won't explode. From what I found, crude oil by itself won't explode with just detonators and nitroprils. But then I had this the issue was, okay, how do I get nitroprils on board a supertanker, because there's so many rules and regulations. You can't even take a film crew on board a supertanker because they won't allow anything that could possibly spark, such as unplugging a light that was still powered up and so on. There was all these little issues that I had to work through. So eventually I found a way. I was looking at base jumping. I was doing a Discovery. I was asked to do a documentary for Discovery, seeing if we could possibly jump off buildings in Thailand. Answer to that was no. It's definitely against the rules. But taking the idea of base jumping and looking at the islands down around Krabi and on the areas where you've got these massive old volcanoes where the top's been blown off, and so you have the part of the crater sitting on the outside, and people scale these, they abseil these, and when they get to the top they jump off with stunt chutes, the long rectangular parachutes, and they can fly their way to wherever they want. Now, how do you put a terrorist on board a boat without anybody finding out about it? There was the ideal situation. They could travel under complete anonymity. They could go to the islands and they could just wait for the shipping to come past, and that was it. They could just jump off there, fly across, land on the decks, because the archipelagos and the land were so close together. You could do that. So there became my way to put the piracy on board the boat. But then I thought, okay, what if I can set up something like terrorism as well? If I can take the terrorist situation and put the terrorists on board the boat, and the pirates don't know the terrorists are on board the boat, then I've got a whole unique setting. But if you've got 5 guys who decide to go into say a 20-foot or 40-foot high cube container full of nitropils, full of sulfate of ammonia, fertilizer basically, and that was somehow to be put on the vessel, then all they've got to do is blow that and go through to the crew that's in the hold, and boom, you'd have an explosion greater than an atomic bomb. So then I looked at the money centres, Hong Kong. We had a look at. I looked around various areas, and obviously the money centre is the 3rd largest money centre in the world. Is Singapore, the Guaylo, and of course a target for anybody. If they can take out the World Trade Centres, and they can certainly take out Singapore if they knew how to do it. And here was the mechanism. So I wrote the story around all these ideas, putting it together. The trick was to try and figure out how to put a container on the deck of a vessel, how to get it on there, how the pirates could come on at a later date, and then when they find out that they've got terrorists on board, hell-bent to take themselves out, how do they stop this? And that was where the whole story came together. So I'm not gonna spoil it for you. I'll let you read the screenplay and figure out how all that happens. The whole idea of it, of course, is that when I was thinking about log lines, initially I was thinking about Timothy McVeigh. I was thinking about the Oklahoma bombing, saying, oh, you know, the Oklahoma bombing was just the beginning. I was trying to find log lines, and then it finally hit me. 9/11 was just a practice run. And if you've got terrorists who actually seal themselves into a container, and the doors are welded shut, how are you going to get in, or how are you going to take them down without them pushing the detonator, because they're inside, the detonator's inside. That was where some of the tricks came together in the screenplay. So that's basically the outline. There's been a lot of research gone into it. I had an offer about 3 months after I was in the middle of writing it, saying if I could get it to LA in time, I would get a positive response. I brought in multi-award winning writer Jeff Ryback, who's won multiple awards on all the screenplays he's ever written. And so I gave Jeff the co-writing credit. I just did the groundwork basically. And it's since been made into a book. It was written by Jake Anthony from IQ Inc. Publishing. The book is out there. It's only an airport read, and it's not how we finally finish the screenplay. So to me, it's a secondary issue. But there is a book in existence called Supertanker, and 9/11 was just a practice run. I hope you enjoy it. If you would be in contact with my agent, Mr. Scott Douglas, at Novell Process Literary Agency in America, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to see the film made. If it's possible to make it in Thailand, which is how I wrote it, I am a production services company. I've been here for 14 years in Thailand. I have 2 licenses with the Motion Picture Film Office of Thailand, and my last film was the last one I did was Shadow Boxing 3 for Russia, and that is now the largest grossing film to come from Russia with director Alexei Sidorov. So we've done quite a few films here, and Thailand's got 6 films going at the moment, 2 internationals. We've certainly got Mechanic 2. We've got other films here, but there's a lot of film work coming into Thailand. On a production point of view, it's as cheap as chips. It's about 50% of the cost of the US to handle below line. So would love to see you. I would love to be the production services company involved in putting Supertanker together, because I've seen every part of it and I know all the locations. So looking forward to hearing from you. Good luck. I hope you enjoy the read.